There has been a spike in young people who are offending at the moment. Kids as young as 7 are involved in smashing shop fronts and doing ramraids in cars, often stolen cars. That has to stop. Many of these young people are already known to government agencies, not necessarily because they've offended, in many cases because they themselves have been victims, either as children or as they have been growing up. They may be known to us, but it's not something that we as government can necessarily solve on our own. We need to work together to do that. And that's why we're announcing a range of different things this morning that are designed to back you to do more to help. So, to run through some of the highlights, and then Minister Sepuloni will join me and run through some of the others. We're extending the Youth Guarantee Scheme to include young people up to the age of 24. And we're improving the wellbeing support and the transport subsidies that go with that program. Youth Guarantee supported around 6,600 young people last year. It helps those with low or no qualifications to move into higher level learning and sustainable employment through fees-free programs and training. And we expect that this extension will enable another 1,100 people to join the program next year. We're extending the Ākonga Fund to help an estimated 2,750 people either stay engaged or re-engaged in education or transition into further training and employment. That additional funding will take the number of people supported by the fund to around 8,250. The Ākonga Fund was established back in 2020 as part of our response to COVID-19. It's designed to support those between the ages of 12 and 21 who had been adversely affected by the impacts of COVID-19. But we've seen the merit of the targeted fund to local organisations who are helping to get young people re-engaged and back into the classroom, so we're extending that again next year. 27 iwi and community-based organisations are currently contracted to deliver youth development programs throughout the country, and no two programs are alike. Each provider adapts youth development activities to tailor their program to meet the needs of a targeted group of young people, their family, their whānau, and their wider community. To date, nearly all 2,666 of the young people who have exited these programs have achieved an education, a training, or an employment outcome. That represents around 52% of those who have been participating in the programs. As of today's announcement, we're also scaling up a number of successful oranga tamariki and police initiatives that work with children and young people and their whānau to reduce negative family behaviours and youth offending. These programs include functional family therapy, the oranga rangatahi youth inclusion programs, alongside intensive mentoring. So taken together, the additional funding means that these programs will now support a further 232 families of the most at-risk young people. Functional family therapy provides family counselling based on behaviours in those aged 10 to 18. It operates in Auckland, Waikato, Bay of Plenty, the Lower North Island and Southern and Greater Christchurch. Part of the program has been focused in Auckland and looks at parental behaviour to do with violence, physical, sexual and mental abuse or neglect in the home. And today's additional funding will extend that program into the Waikato. Family functional therapy has led to reductions in youth offending of between 25 and 60% and a lessening in challenging behaviours and incidences of family harm. Youth inclusion programs aim to reduce offending and the likelihood of young people aged 10 to 17 entering the youth justice system. And there are currently 16 programs supported by Oranga Tamariki, and today's funding will establish a further 3 across Auckland. The intensive mentoring program is done by Ruapōtaka Marae and Blue Light, and it provides mentoring to children aged 10 to 14 who are disengaged from school, don't have any support, or have had early contact with the police and are at risk of entering the youth justice system. We're enabling more young people to come into the program. It'll also include co-offenders of current clients, the siblings, and those identified as at risk of escalation. The idea is not just to work with the individuals, but to the whole of the whānau, to support, and that support will be available as long as the whānau wants it to be available. In a moment, I'll hand over to my colleague, the Minister Carmel Sepuloni, to talk through some of the other parts of today's package, but I want to end with a few other remarks. Today's announcement builds on the good work we're already doing for young people. For example, our funded plan to improve school attendance. Today's package builds on that by including more localised support to keep young people in school. And it also builds on the work I've seen during my recent visits to police stations around the country, where agencies are working together on the ground and, and with community groups to find local solutions that build community resilience, address harm and engage young people. Part of this package is designed to keep young people out of the justice system, where police and partner agencies believe that an alternative approach is warranted. But I want to be clear, though, that young offenders committing serious crimes will continue to be dealt with seriously. This is about a second chance for those who merit a second chance. It's not a free pass. These approaches, combining re-entry into education with joined up and prompt agency wellbeing and whānau supports, do work, and we've seen really clear evidence that they do work and they do make a difference. They take a big effort and the work is hard, but they can and do turn young people's lives around. Nowadays, I would note that the opponents of these sorts of programs call them soft on crime. Once upon a time, they used to call them social investment. When it comes to young offending, many of the so-called tough on crime initiatives that we see are actually a fast track into more serious offending for young people. We can't continue down that road. It doesn't work. We'd far rather invest in preventing young people falling on the pathway to crime in the first place and getting them back on the straight and narrow, rather than engaging in the sorts of activities that may look tough, but ultimately actually make the problem worse rather than better. Our government believes that young people are too important to give up on, and that all young people who have found themselves on a pathway that could lead to more serious reoffending deserve the opportunity to have a second chance, not just those who come from middle class and wealthier families.